The DUP's leader in Westminster says those who hold different views on social issues like gay marriage and abortion have no reason to fear the party's influence on the government. Nigel Dodds, who's been negotiating a confidence in supply agreement with Downing Street, has told Sky News he and his colleagues have been misrepresented as dinosaurs. He's been speaking to our Ireland correspondent, David Blevins.
With the vote on the Queen's speech looming, all eyes were back on the kingmakers. The DUP's conservative stance on gay marriage and abortion shocked the wider UK electorate. But the party's deputy leader says these things were never on the table.
Those are cultural and social issues, but they're devolved issues which will be dealt with at a local level. They will not intrude, and we have never intruded them in terms of the Westminster Parliament or the rest of the United Kingdom. So nobody has anything to worry about in that.
Were you surprised, since the party came to such prominence in Westminster, to hear fellow MPs describing you as dinosaurs? And what can you say to persuade them that you're not?
I'm not that surprised, because some of them are opponents. And people can always go back through the archives of any political party and find individuals saying things or policies from 20, 30 years ago. But they need to read our manifesto and look at the history of recent years in Northern Ireland, where the DUP has been the main partner in government with Republicans to move this province forward.
Never! 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 Never!
Founded by the Reverend Ian Paisley, the DUP was a party of protest. Sinn Féin, its arch-nemesis.
There must be a complete doing away with terrorism, with criminal activities, and there must be absolute support for the police. Let them fulfil that.
When the firebrand preacher shared power with Martin McGuinness, it signalled a new, more pragmatic era. So what does Ian Jr., an MP, think his late father would make of the party now?
He was a man of with a very strong faith, and he would have said that is a time where you seek God's help and where you seek to have that wisdom to take the country forward. And but he was also a deal maker and a very good businessman, and he would have taken the approach to make sure that you get the very, very best deal for our people, the very, very best deal for our nation.
Some vote DUP because of its social conservatism, others just to keep Sinn Féin out. Holding the balance of power at Westminster has placed Northern Ireland's largest party in the national spotlight.
I think their social conservatism is not anything really that mainstream politics in England has experienced in any time really since the 1950s. And I think they're reeling from the shock of, thinking that this medieval-looking party is going to have a major influence in British politics.
The Democratic Unionists have only had 3 leaders in their 45-year history, and the current one has a balance to strike. Arlene Foster doesn't want any deal with the Tories to scupper hopes of another one with Sinn Féin. David Blevins, Sky News in Belfast.
Well, joining me now from Worcester is Dr. Eamon O'Kane, an expert on Northern Ireland politics. Dr. Eamon, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. So they're not dinosaurs, says Nigel Dodds. Do you think that term is a misrepresentation of who the DUP are now?
Well, they're clearly not dinosaurs insofar as they're a long way from being extinct. Their views are, as your piece suggested there, more out of kilter with wider mainstream British political opinion than in Northern Ireland. But the separation between the social conservatism and the pragmatism, which again your piece brought out, is something that needs to be borne in mind. Because the deal that's on the table at Westminster has nothing to do with social conservatism. And the pragmatic considerations of the DUP, who are very well used to tough negotiations and brinkmanship, will be in play here. So the other issue about the criticisms that they're garnering, again, won't really worry the DUP. They're a party that are very well used to being criticised, and it really would be water off a duck's back.
So let's talk about their social conservatism. Their views, are they fairly reflective of the greater population in Northern Ireland, the 5 churches, for example?
They're reflective of a sector of the Northern Ireland community. But Northern Ireland, on social conservatism and religion, as on many other political and indeed some economic matters, is far more diverse a society. But where Nigel Dodds is perhaps his interpretation is slightly questionable. It's his observation about going back 20 or 30 years to find random comments that maybe don't reflect the modern mood of the party. On certain social conservative issues, they still hold those views very strongly. They've used the condition of a petition of concern mechanism that they could use at Stormont to actually stop advances in some of the areas related to gay marriage, etc., in recent years. So but it hasn't done them any harm, because there is this sector of the community who are socially very conservative and who have religious affiliations with the party and with Paisley's Free Presbyterianism, but there is a wider view in Northern Ireland that wouldn't hold these views. So on that point, there is great division in Northern Ireland.
So if we look to these negotiations now and this social conservatism, if that's not going to play a part, if you think that that's not going to play a part, what will they be looking to get out of the deal with Westminster?
Yeah, the deal with Westminster is fascinating, because what's perhaps slightly underappreciated, but your piece alluded to, is there are actually two negotiations running in parallel, but they are meant to be separate. There's a negotiation at Westminster about getting the DUP to support, in certain circumstances, the Conservative government to enable them to stay in power. But there's concurrent negotiations that are going on at Stormont about the reconfiguration of devolved government and trying to get the executive back up and running. And whilst those two things are separate, they are obviously connected. So, for example, the deadline for each is looming. Thursday is the vote for the Queen's speech, but also the end of the week is when the deadline is for getting devolution back. And it's unlikely that Sinn Féin, for example, would be willing to agree a deal to restore devolution to Northern Ireland without knowing what's in the deal that the DUP will do at Westminster. So what the DUP seem to want is economically focused, money for the health service, for infrastructure. There's some talk about the military covenant in recent days and its application to Northern Ireland, which is a good example of where these two things are meant to be separate but become intermeshed.